Shalom, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State in 1981, now celebrating our 44th year. Today is Wednesday, November 26, 2025, in the Gregorian calendar. And since it is after nightfall, in the Hebrew calendar, a day starts at nightfall the day before. It is the seventh day of the ninth Israelite Hebrew month of Kislev in the Hebrew Israelite year of 5786. So, welcome to episode 38 of our monthly seminar, Ancient Roots, Mothering Roots, Nettles, and Sage, with three mighty warrior, Israelite warrior pioneer women of the God of Israel. In alphabetical order, by first name would be Chava, Gila, and Rivka. By last name, Mrs. J. Rivka Asalin, Mrs. Chava Dagan, and Mrs. Gila Weiss. Rivka lives on a homestead in the Lower Galilee in Eretz Yisrael. Chava with one husband and lots of kids, all of them. And Chava lives on a homestead. This is really like the Old West in southwest Negev, next to Philistine chaos occupied Canaanite human child sacrifice cult occupied Gaza, which was once a great rabbinic center and will be very shortly. And Gila lives in Florida, which seems to have a sane governor and surgeon general at the moment. So fortunate to have these programs. Now, about putting pesos in the pushka. Please, I want you all out there to support the work of Gila, Rivka, and Chava. Go to the websites listed below. There are a lot of goods and services they offer. That Chava is a beekeeper. She has honey. She produces her own honey. And these are three of the world's, in my opinion, leading herbalists. Gila, Rivka, and Chava are herbalists. You're getting centuries and centuries of ancient female ladylike wisdom. I'm sure Hildegard of Bingen, I know she was an abbotess, but she was a good girl, basically, is smiling down from heaven listening to these programs because she was quite a gal. I'm sure she had a Jew in the family. She had to get her brains from somewhere. So these ladies want you to listen to them and support their work. Now, before I go up to the gallery, put pesos in my pushka too. I don't get that many, but that's okay. And at least I get them from people I like and respect. So Lowell welcomes your support for his work to build our 30-year-old Hebrew Bible-based broadcasting network and English language conference and lecture series from Jerusalem to honor the Godland Torah and people of Israel and all humanity in our 1-year-old, well, it's almost two, since January 2024, Henry Dunster College of Jerusalem. We are replanting the old Harvard in the New Jerusalem. Who is Henry Dunster? Henry Dunster was, for all practical purposes, the first president of Harvard College. Don't hold your breath. This is 400 years ago. The first graduating class of 1642 had 9 boys. They didn't even have a minion. And who taught all the classes? Henry Dunster. That was it. That our Anglo-Celtic Israelite Puritan Pilgrim founding fathers had a vision, a plan. They just did it. That's the way pioneers do stuff. And on the faculty is herbalists, are Gila, Chava, and Rivka. And the Madam Chair and Distinguished Scholar in Residence for our school is Roseanne Barr. So, unfortunately, I'm glad my father didn't live down here to see this. The Harvard University that he knew and loved, it doesn't exist anymore. It engaged in moral, spiritual, ethical, intellectual, Japanese ritual suicide, harakiri seppuku over the last few years. And it's dead. There are a lot of buildings, they're mausoleums in a cemetery, and they have a big endowment, but it's not, it's dead. It's dead when your president can say in response to a question by Representative Elise Stefanik in the Congress, is it okay to call for the genocide of Jews? Now, if the question had been asked about Native Americans, blacks, Hispanics, gays, lesbians, biased transgenders, the answer would have been no. But with a wicked, vicious little smile, don't let me start with my profanities, said, well, it depends on the context. And Elise was shocked. She said, I'm going to ask you the question again, ask it 3 times. It depends on the context. The university is dead. That woman had to resign as president, but she was given a $900,000 a year job to teach a course. It turned out she plagiarized her doctorate. It's dead. In honor of Henry Dunster and John Harvard, they didn't even have a name for the college when they decided in 1636 we're going to have a college. They just said we're going to have a college. Then came John Harvard. He was 30. He died young. People died in those days. You got infections, you died. And they named it after him. And now, 400 years later, the college died. It's so easy to destroy, but so difficult to build and plant. And that's why we have world-class teachers and world-class people in activities with world-class ideas from world-class people such as Chava, Gila, and Rivka. And now, without further ado, I'm going up to the gallery to participate in the class with these 3 professors. Ladies, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lil Aryeh. It is so great to finally be a professor. I've waited for this for so long. I was so excited when Lil Aryeh made us professors in his college. So I look forward to everybody donating so that this can be a real physical place and we can all teach in person and meet in person. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are going to talk about menstruation and Moontime and Aunt Flo and the Crimson Tide and all those wonderful, wonderful euphemisms for menstruation. Why are we talking about menstruation? Because menstruation is a very holy, sacred, natural rhythm of life. It's so sacred and so ancient that there's a whole halacha created around menstruation called commonly Taharat Hamishpacha. And it used to mean something. It used to be central to the family, and it used to be central to the community, and a public even display, which we'll get to in a bit. But today it's become something that's shameful, hidden from view, not important, something that we should, go on with life, tamshichu, move forward, forget all about it. And in doing this, we're really robbing ourselves of the rhythm of home and family. So I think maybe we can talk a little bit about how this is seen and about just about those themes for a minute. Who would like to jump in first?
Gila, you want to go?
But you're muted.
So I did, we did have a little conversation yesterday, but I kind of missed a bunch of it. So I'm just going to share and then I'm going to flow with the two of you because this is all about flowing. So I do want to stress so much and tell the stories that I know in today's day, this is so important to the 3 of us and so many other women, because we are hearing and feeling the whispers of our ancient ancestors. And so we need to really spread the word. And I ask whoever is listening to this, go back and look at your own family. Find out who your great grandmother was or your great great grandmother. Try and to find out where they lived and what traditions they had surrounding the monthly cycle. There are a few things that we still know, even though so many of us in our modern lives, post World War II, where the families were totally broken up and destroyed, and we're parts of the broken chain, but we still have sparks and stories, and we know that our ancestors, even our modern ancestors, marked the start of puberty with ritual and celebration. It was a celebration that was public. It might not have been in the streets to tambourines, but it definitely would have included foods, aunts, sisters, cousins, grandmothers. It definitely would have been a celebration amongst the women folk in the family, close friends, and it would have included a celebration and an entry card into the club of womanhood, into the cycle of fertility, and it was worn with great pride. It was something that girls looked forward to, couldn't wait to join, and it was a very positive and not shameful thing. And not only in our traditions and cultures, but when you look around the world, and you look at many of the plains tribes in the US. I was just in Colombia, and there are so many indigenous tribes, and quite a few of them tell stories of their traditions surrounding the women's cycle, where the woman would go to a separate home. And this was not for punishment. In fact, quite the opposite. The monthly cycle was so revered, so respected, that it was obvious that women needed time to, be away from their duties and the hard work that women do still today. It's modern women are even more busy with everything that we do. We multitask even in our sleep. And so this was a mark of respect and celebration. And when women were in their blood, when they were bleeding, they were considered traditionally as being in their power. Their moon time, they were expected to be in touch with their lunar cycles and a time for going in. These houses of separation were where women met and had camaraderie and would take care of each other. The women were fed, the women were pampered, they got to rest, they got a time to be still with themselves, to celebrate their own bodies and their fertility. And their kids were taken care of by the other women. This is part of the village that is very missing today. And I believe that each one of us longs for this village where in the different cycles of our lives, where I would be today, I would be feeding the two of you and I would be caring for your children. And years ago, it might have been one of your mothers or aunts who would be caring for me. And so there's that give and take. Everything is the cycle. And so I just wanted to quickly segue in with that. We all have these traditions, and it's not just us as Jews with our traditions, but most cultures going back have these traditions of celebrating and respecting us. Chava.
You just hit my favorite word for tonight, respect. Oh my gosh, it's so missing. It's so missing.
Yeah.
So in order for women to take that time and give themselves a rest or a cup of hot chocolate or time with a friend or a bath or whatever it might be during this time, she has to be respected in order to know that that's an honor time. It's a time for her to come in and get in touch with her body again. Respect her cycles and the differences and how her body is changing and all the things that go into it, but it has to come from support from those around her. And support means that they respect this time. And it is so lacking. I kind of feel like it's like an across the board, from husbands, from friends, mothers, mother-in-laws. It doesn't matter. There's so much pressure to just continue. It's an inconvenience. That's what it is. It's an inconvenience. So ignore it, stuff things up there, get it out of the way, take your pill, right? Your birth control pill, it completely knocks it out. Then you don't even have to deal with it. You can pretend like you don't have something that is so inconvenient to have. And that attitude is completely opposite from what we really need, deserve, and it should just be prevalent between women. And when you are supported by your husband and your community, therefore respected, then like you said, it's not a punishment, whereas that's kind of the attitude these days. It is a punishment. It's something that you have to deal with. It's a nuisance. It's messy. You need to clean it up and stay always, keep it out of the way and hush hush and continue with all of your housework and your career and moving up the ladder and busy schedules. It doesn't matter. And it's a very sad situation. And that's why we're here to try and remedy and bring some respect back.
Yeah, the life cycle of a woman is so different than a man, where a man has some kind of stability. We kind of oftentimes liken this to the sun and the moon. So the moon is like this I'm sorry, the sun is very constant. It's a very constant kind of light, and that should be projecting outwards in nourishment. And the woman's life experience is much like the moon. There's periods where she's shining full light or shining half light or really pulled in, and there's all the light is kind of contained within. It's dynamic. And so the whole idea of respecting women and women's and the cycles as being a necessary part of family and community life. So, like when a woman is pregnant, when she gives birth, get everyone kind of honoring her and supporting her, because she is the ultimate nurturer for her children, for her family, for building her husband up. In a kind of in a perfect world, this would have been our role. But in order to do that, and herein lies the problem, is so many women are trying to do this with empty cups. And society used to fill women's cups at all the time with regularity, and all the times they could become especially drained, like pregnancy and childbirth, and those early times after childbirth, or with the monthly menstrual cycle, ways to really fill a cup. So let's go back for a minute and talk, since we're dealing with kind of what the problem is. Let's talk about menstrual products for a minute. So I've written a lot of blogs on wisewomanfertility.com. I'll type it in the chat later, or if one of you want to do it, wisewomanfertility.com. And you can go look at the blog archives where I've talked a lot about menstruation there. But one of the things that I've written a lot about is menstrual products, because the idea of having and marketing disposable menstrual products is fairly new. And there's a lot of problems inherent to disposable menstrual products. For one, they're kind of this bleached white. They're this white kind of sterile, it's like a bandage or something, or, so you can read the amount of blood, and it's just like, there's something so not womanly about it. It's clinical and pristine white, only. And so just that idea in and of itself is problematic. Maybe we don't have a lot of time to go into it, but the way you get that bleached product is super problematic because the bleaching process and the glues and fibers that are used, and sometimes what's it called, the microfibers, I guess, these like like pieces of glass or things like different things that these disposable menstrual products are made with. They produce toxins, dioxins. They're really bad for you. And we are, with tampons, a woman is inserting those toxins and dioxins directly into her vaginal canal, and it's sitting there for, maybe 5 days a week, maybe more, maybe a week out of every month. And same with disposable pads. So this isn't how things were done. When Chava and I were talking about this, we kind of looked up the history of menstrual products. I had done a long time ago, but I was actually interested in the belt. So for anyone who doesn't know, in the generation above ours, women wore belts. And I understood that there was a connection between that and what was used for animals in captivity that were in heat, because they would place a belt on the animal, like a dog. Animals are on all fours, right? So they would put a belt on the animal and then put a pad around the belt so that, first of all, the animal wouldn't breed because there was a pad in the way. And second of all, to collect the blood and kind of reduce, trails of blood and therefore pheromones and all these other things that could attract other animals. But we were talking about, a female dog, often called a bitch, right? And this connection with then creating, I think in the 19th century, it was, so 1800s, a belt product for women. And the belts used to be a belt that had these kind of clips, and you would just take a washcloth or some type of towel, and you would clip it onto this belt, and have basically a pad. But if we look far back at our ancestors, I mean, we have stories, we have midrash about our foremothers, particularly the story of Rachel, where she tells her father that she's menstruating and she's sitting on basically a pile of sand. And of course, that's where she's kept these idols. And she knows her father won't lift up her skirts to see what's under there. But it was understood, and also from Midrash, that this is what women used to do. They used to sit on a little sand dune or a pile of sand or a pile of earth. Throughout different cultures, I know from my Celtic side, women would go into their gardens and just bleed into the ground, into the garden, or would collect menstrual blood, mix it with some water and sprinkle it on the plants. And it was considered a very good fertilizer. And then, of course, I remember hearing the stories from some of the Ethiopian immigrants, one woman in particular, an Ethiopian immigrant to Israel, who talked about, of course, in Ethiopia, before they came back to Israel, they were keeping the written Torah, not the oral Torah. And so they had something like a red tent situation, although we can't confirm it was actually red, or what really went on there. But the Ethiopians would go to this tent during their menstrual period, and they were keeping that practice up until very recent times and separating the women that way. So we also know that some cultures look down on women's menstruation. It's thought to like sour milk or destroy meat. And so in some cultures, menstruating women weren't allowed to prepare food or things like this because it was considered really bad. They could harm the family or create some type of food poisoning from that. So I think there is a battle, especially when you look at kind of the three, I guess they're called monotheistic religions, but that's debatable, right? So we've got Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So we have our tradition, and then we've got kind of Islam, which has seen women as unclean, and they're not allowed to go into the mosque to pray. And then kind of Christianity throughout the Middle Ages also saw this as very unclean. And sometimes we get grouped in, many times we as Jews get grouped in with Islam and Christianity, and it's just assumed that we saw menstruation as something unclean. And I pose that this isn't the case. We do understand that in the days of the Beit HaMikdash, of the Holy Temple, women were would wear special clothes and jewelry during their menstruation so that it was easily identifiable to the public that she was menstruating. Why? Because there was a spiritual, what's called impurity, okay, which we often see halachically when women come into contact with death or a corpse or someone who's died. And when you think about it, if you consider the fact that a woman, a married woman, could potentially become pregnant at any point in her cycle, when she has her period, it's kind of a confirmation that if there was perhaps a baby growing or she could have become pregnant, this hope has died, or this embryo has died, or this potential has died. So there could be a connection there, very likely could be a connection there with death, and that's why this kind of same spiritual impurity was imposed, okay, on the situation. But what I found interesting when I was discussing it with Chava was that one would expect kind of a patriarchal, anti-woman, culture to tell women, well, you're having your period and you can make other people unclean, spiritually unclean before they go to the mikvah. So you better stay in the house. Don't come outside, don't be seen, it's your responsibility. But that isn't what our ancestors did. Our ancestors said, here, wear these special clothes that signal to everyone that you're menstruating, and go out in the market and go do your thing and live your life, do whatever you want, no restrictions on you. It's up to the men to know not to, sit where you sat, or all of these other things that were halachot at the time that we no longer keep, but they're still, they'll probably be revived when the Beit HaMikdash is rebuilt, the Holy Temple. But I just found it very interesting and kind of empowering. And we don't know exactly what these clothes look like. There's different ideas. Some scholars think that a woman may have been dressed in red, or in certain red clothes, or had red jewelry, like garnets or something like that. But whatever it was kind of universally understood to signal that this woman was menstruating, and she was out in the public, and everyone kind of saw this as just part of life, and she was still functioning in a very normal way with also some honor. I could go on into some more of those things about the sacred space of women. Just to touch on very quickly, not having any physical contact between husband and wife when a woman is nida, when she's having her menstrual period, and then the period of time afterwards until she immerses into a mikvah, into a ritual bath, as being a time where women, it really was a time to be filling a woman's cup. Her body is not available to her husband. It doesn't matter what he wants or what his needs are. It's understood her needs are to pull in, nourish herself, and her husband is not to interfere with that in any way. So I'm going to pass on from there, but just some thoughts from our own ancestors I wanted to share.
So I find it really interesting when we look back and we see so many different traditions from our ancestors even. And when we look at the Middle Ages, it's already kind of modern times, because it doesn't matter, like you said, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. At that point, we're all considered impure and shunned instead of respected. So from then on, it's been we've been conditioned, put it this way, for over 1,000 years to be shunned, impure, and everything that goes along with that, and keep it a secret. We don't want to know. Everything that is the opposite of true feminism. In fact, everything that we see today as a result of whatever was, is anti-feminism. Because when we're told, like Chava said, and I will repeat, just stuff something up there and go climb the corporate ladder, is disrespectful to our essence of femininity and the celebration that our body works, our cycles work, and we stand a good chance of bringing life into this world, procreating. And so that in and of itself is a celebration. And beyond that, our cycles tell us so much about our own bodies. I wasn't taught this, but we have an opportunity to delve a little deeper and explore the blood. Look at it. Look at your own blood. It's from your own body. It's divine design. And the color of your blood, is it bright red? That could be because your hormones are imbalanced. That's healthy. Is it very pink, light? That might be a lack of progesterone or more estrogen. And I'm not saying what it is. I'm just telling you that these are keys. Actually, excessive clotting and a very heavy flow could signal thyroid issues, could signal perhaps higher estrogen, maybe a sluggish liver. Any and all of these, we could even have a cycle. I have been through everything. I'm past that already. And I have women who share with me, and I'm so grateful that they share these intimate details with me. And sometimes they're like, it started this way and then it progressed that way. And I'm like, there's one of your keys to your personal health and reproductive health puzzle. So these are gifts when we take the time to use positive words. We have it on us. It's almost like the yoke of heaven. We're a little older now. We need to teach these, and we need to spread this message with positive words and positive thoughts. And we need to encourage our sisters, our friends, to acknowledge the vulnerability that we feel at that time of the month. It's by design. And to reach out, to go inside and connect and reach out. It's normal. We're not hysterics and more emotional. In fact, yes, we should take pride in being emotional because we feel, we're in tune. Our bodies experience cascades of hormones that men cannot even fathom. In fact, in pregnancy, there's this rise, especially in the last trimester, of progesterone to levels that we will never again experience in our lifetimes. And right after the birth of the placenta, it's like a waterfall. It crashes down. No wonder we have all these feelings. We cry, we feel euphoria, we feel joy. We attach to the soul that we've just birthed. Our bodies go through these hormones, and we need to acknowledge, and we need to also, beyond acknowledge, we need to validate this to everyone and encourage little rituals. Rivka, you said, I've never taken a rose petal bath. Neither have I. I've never rested very much in my moon time. But I do remember little things, whether it's having chocolate or, like Chava said, make a cacao. You know, one of the things I love to share, make a nice warm foot bath. Put in Epsom salts. You can do a foot bath because you can write while you're doing, you can be on your phone, you can crochet, you can do whatever you need or you want to be busy with, but you also will feel focused and relaxing and get the benefit of a warm foot bath. Put in an essential oil and have an aromatherapy session. Little things that we can do. We need to nourish our bodies, our minds, and our souls. And I know we're not there yet, but there are also foods and remedies because this can be a time of physical discomfort. And guess what? Discomfort is okay. It's part of life. We are conditioned to, like Chava said, I love everything you said. I'm like connecting to it. Take a pill or get a shot and don't experience your cycle. Deny your femininity. Don't feel uncomfortable in today's day. Why would you want to be uncomfortable? Because that's what life is. How can you feel the comfort and the joy if you don't have the other side of that scale? That is the yin and the yang. That is the story of our lives. That's why it's called a cycle. And so sitting in the discomfort and reaching out and making those special teas like a Nora tea or those nourishing foods to keep, especially for moon time, and to share with our friends and family, to connect. Chava.
Awesome. That's very holistic. You've hit like in so many points and so many, it's so important. One thing that as you're talking, I'm picturing the moon and how closely we are attuned to it. And when you think of how Rivka was saying, all of these toxic products that are thrown at us, pushed on us, as if we don't have any other options. If you're just looking at mainstream, you know, the pharmacy or wherever you go. Besides the toxicity that goes inside, there is a level of these chemicals that is actually meant to separate us from that part of us that connects to the earth, our grounding, our connection to the moon, the tides, waters. I mean, we basically have an ocean inside of us as we are filling up and emptying out. As the tide comes in and the tide washes out, this is all us. It's inside of us, it's outside of us, it's above us, and it's below us. And we need to feel so immersed and so apart and so one with all of these things. But the teaching and the pressure and the horrible message is it's sinful, it's dirty, you know, like we said, just disconnect from it, which is the saddest thing, really. And all of this is very coming from the masculine corporate kind of world where they own the big companies, right? All the, I don't know the names of the products that are pushed. And yet this is the women's domain. It's our own body. It's our own time. It's our cycles. And without this wonderful cycle, we would not be able to have children. And so we kind of need to grab it back and make it the women's domain again. Make it so that we go outside and we watch the moon. We see the tide, we think about the tide, we meditate on the tide and how it is fluctuating with our own fluctuations. And again, just to bring it all in, that we are part and parcel of this earth, which is the absolute opposite of what they're telling us. So the sacred body has been erased. We mentioned that. And so this, for me, it's the vision of the moon and all of its cycles, how it gets full and then empties out, and gets full and empties out. And the tide, the same thing, flushes in and flushes out. That's us. That's who we are.
So you touched on the menstrual products, and Gila, you touched on handling your own blood. And I want to bring up the options. I talked a bit about sitting on sand or sitting on the earth, but the progression of menstrual products went into, like I mentioned before, towels. We've used grass, we've used moss, and just kind of lined our undergarments with it, which of course is very earthy. We were taking materials from the earth, really from the earth, to absorb and kind of contain menstrual flow. But you know, I know, and I recommend to all of my clients, all of them across the board. And I don't do a lot of things across the board because our work as herbalists is very tailor made to each person. And that's why when the people ask me, what do you do for? And ask all of us, what do you do for whatever? I can't answer it. We always get into trouble because, you know, in the Western medical model, it's like, oh, you take this drug this many times a day, and it doesn't work that way in herbal medicine. However, I have noticed across the board that disposable menstrual products are bad for all women. What degree of bad? It depends. Some women and here's how I know this, because I'll recommend reusable menstrual products. So something like a menstrual cup, which is basically a tampon type idea. It's an actual cup that's usually made from medical grade plastic or silicone. And it's inserted into the vaginal canal, kind of pops open and catches the menstrual flow. It looks like a little mini wine glass, basically. And you take it out, and when you empty it, you actually are looking and seeing your own blood. So it's a very pure way to understand what's going on. If you're, like Gila said, the color of your blood, I mean, when I see clients, I'm always asking, what is the color of your blood? Do you have clots? How big are the clots? Sometimes people don't know because it's on a tampon or it's whatever, they just throw it out. And so if I have that information, just like Gila said, I can say, oh, let's look at your thyroid. Let's look at your, just really focus in. Um, but if you have a menstrual cup, you have a very pure way of collecting your blood. And when you pour it out into the toilet, you can see what's there. You can see the clots. You can see if there are any, you can see what's happening. Another product that I recommend is cloth menstrual pads, which I have actually been using. It used to be associated with the feminist movement. So when I was a super left feminist, back in the day, I mean, we probably all were to some extent. Feminism has changed a lot. But back in those days, it was also about getting in touch with the earth and the rhythms of your body. And so I would go and I would get these cloth pads, or of course you can make your own. And it's the same thing. You put a cloth pad nowadays in your underwear, and you rinse it out. And when you're rinsing it out, you rinse it in the sink or whatever, and you squeeze it and wring it. You get to see your blood. You get to see if there's any clots. They're on the surface. You get to see what's going on, what the color of your blood is, exactly how much blood you're having, or I should say menstrual fluid, because there's other things in the menstrual fluid besides just blood. So, but I do note, and here's how I know that the disposables are not healthy, whereas these other products are, because a lot of times I deal with women who are having severe problems. They come to me after typically years, even a decade or more, in the Western medical model that has failed them. And when they come to me, a lot of times we have certain things like halachic infertility, abnormal bleeding, things like that. And once we get rid of the disposable products filled with the toxins and dioxins, and we bring in cloth pads from organic cotton or flannel or whatever you want, those types of irregular bleeding issues tend to disappear or self-regulate very quickly. And I've seen it happen so many times. I mean, women who are having what's called halachic infertility. They're staining and they're having all this spotting. I have this so much. So many women suffer in silence, but switching to reusable menstrual products can make all the difference. Can't promise you that's your solution, but I can definitely say that I've seen it solve this issue in enough women that it's a theme for me, without anything else, without any herbs or any other type of thing. So I just want to make people aware of those options. And Gila talked about the vulnerabilities and emotions, the emotional and vulnerable place we're at, which is mental, physical, and so on. And maybe Chava can talk about it, because we were talking about some of the things like water retention, skin issues. Maybe I'll bounce that over there. Some of the real physical things that happen, and in order to give us pause during this time.
Yeah, so we mentioned there's skin issues. Some people might get a breakout or some kind of a rash. Feeling fat. You just feel like no matter how you're eating, it has nothing to do with what's going in. It's all this water retention, and people get a little bit moody, cravings. So many people can have so many different things going on, and they don't realize that it's an onset to their menstruation until it comes. So then there's that feeling of frustration, like I'm gaining so much weight and I don't feel right, and everything's bothering me and I'm looking for a fight and I'm whatever. So people go through their different things, but I will get into herbs in a minute. Just this one thing always pops out to me, that most of us crave some form of chocolate during this time. And for me, that's just it might be a symbol, and I really haven't looked into it. I'm sure it's all over the internet, but I haven't looked into it. That it is an herbal connection, cacao, to this time. Maybe it's the minerals, maybe it's the caffeine, maybe it's a whole connection of all kinds of different things. But that's one thing to think like, oh, I want this chocolate. I have these cravings, and then you feel guilty or that it shouldn't be because I'm already gaining so much weight. But if we switch the mindset and think, oh, this is an herbal answer to what I'm experiencing, then we can just welcome it without the feelings of guilt or, oh, I shouldn't do this or whatever. But actually just to welcome it and say, okay, this is part of my getting in touch with me. This is part of respecting my body and its messages that it's giving to me.
Hila, you're muted. But I hope you'll mention digestion too. I don't want to let that slip by. Some women having diarrhea or constipation right around the onset of their periods, taste buds changing, things like that.
So I want to quickly touch on cacao since you mentioned cacao. And I just spent a week in Colombia and I drank more cacao than I think I have had in my life. And this is pure cacao. And pure cacao, before it is processed or it becomes what we call chocolate, even dark chocolate, is an unbelievably nutrient dense food and drink. And even though it contains caffeine, I actually did an experiment. I didn't intend to experiment, but after a long and arduous mountain hike, we were greeted with open arms by an amazing indigenous family and offered cacao. And you would think after a hike, this is going to further dehydrate you. And the total opposite was true. And it was so nourishing. And for women, I feel like it just fills in those places that comfort kind of thing, as well as it sharpens your facilities, your brain. And so I could not think of a more perfect food than chocolate. And if possible, the unprocessed cacao, make a drink of it. It is absolutely awesome. I'm happy to touch on digestion because our cycles are very much connected, our hormones. Let's take it back a minute to how our liver processes our hormones. And so part of the feeling of the sluggish or the bloating and all of that can also be that parts of our body, like digestion and the liver especially, needs more support, needs more love, needs more nourishment. So bitter herbs like dandelion, everybody knows dandelion tea, bitter digestive herbs, whether a tea, whether a tincture, bitter foods can be so nourishing and supportive to the process of our liver that is dealing with these hormones that we're going through during our cycle. And so that can be really helpful for the digestion. And, when it comes to different foods and diets, there are over 1 million tips and people who will say, always eat this and never eat that. You have to be vegan on your cycle. You should only eat seeds. You should only eat nuts. You should only eat raw. You should only eat paleo. We can get dizzy with all the different tips and urban myths and things like that. However, it is one time of the month that I always like to suggest to my women friends, if you're craving some carbohydrates, Listen to your body. And most older cultures, indigenous cultures, besides for the cacao, will indulge in sweet potato or taro or yucca or potatoes, whatever it is that works for you, make that comfort food and make it nutrient dense and nourishing. And I want to just touch on the Nora tea because I think it is such a huge, big part. Nora is an acronym for nettles, oat straw, red raspberry, and alfalfa. It has gotten that coined term, due to trending Instagram. It took me a while to figure it out. Nourishing herbal teas are now called Nora. Well, she's amazing. She is so rich in nutrients and hormone balancing. Add in the red clover there, and you can have the most delicious, nutrient dense, hormone supporting mineral drink, uterine toning throughout your cycle, but especially during your cycle.
I'm so glad you explained what Nora was, because this was the second time you mentioned it. I'm like, how would I not know what
Who's
she's
Nora?
talking about? Nora tea. Is this a brand? Are you creating a new urban myth? But no, totally right. And all those herbs were on my list as well. So let's open it up here and wrap up with herbs. I want to talk about my favorite herb. I feel like a mother who's just called out her favorite child whenever I say that. This is my
I know
favorite,
what you're going to say.
this is my favorite child, my favorite herb, but it's not true. I love them all. I love them all. It's just in this moment about this thing. Okay, so yarrow, which everyone knows I'm going to talk about. Um, Yarrow is so amazing here. So yarrow is a hemostatic, meaning that it stops bleeding. So it's also one of its common names is nosebleed. It's used to, stop like nose bleeding. It's used in like very deep injuries and cuts, and you can pack it in with powdered yarrow and bring healing and stop bleeding. But Gila and I actually were going to offer a class on the equal and opposite reactions of herbs. Thank you, Law. And then we were rejected because I am Israeli and living in Israel. And Gila, so I need to call you out for this, Gila. Gila, who was not rejected, stepped up and said, "Well, I'm an Israeli and an American now." And she stepped down, because if they weren't going to accept me because I was Israeli, coming from Israel, then she could have hidden and just been very quiet and gone to this conference as an American, but she didn't. She stood up and stood by my side and stood up for Israel and stood up for me, and stepped down on really an amazing opportunity for people to learn from Gila. So everybody's loss, except mine, because I had my friends stand by me. But it's everybody else's loss in the world, the other 10 billion people. But anyway, so while yarrow is a hemostatic, yarrow can also bring on, it's a menagogue. So it can cause or not cause, it can encourage your menstrual flow to begin when there's perhaps a reason for delayed menstrual flow. So I'm not specifically talking about abortion. I'm not going into that right now. But what I'm talking about is like some women can really hold on due to stress or major changes, perhaps traveling, time zone changes, things like that. There's different reasons why a woman's period might be delayed, or ovulation might be delayed, and therefore delaying your period as well. But yarrow would be something helpful there, and so it's really fun. And another herb that I like to bring up here is ginger, the culinary herb ginger, which is, it also kind of has this dual principle. So ginger is actually recommended in pregnancy many times, and Gila maybe will chime in here, for morning sickness in early pregnancy to help navigate morning sickness. But there's this duality about it, because on the one hand, you wouldn't want to recommend something that could initiate bleeding or, God forbid, cause a miscarriage. And yet ginger is recommended, in early pregnancy. Yet ginger is recommended to deal with morning sickness and is in general considered to be safe. But on the other hand, there are lots of stories about ginger, especially fermented ginger, actually, bringing on a woman's period. And so, gosh, I think it was a Susan Weed book where she talked about a friend who was sitting and having a ginger beer, and got her period like 2 days early or 3 days early, and she had been regular by the clock. So I just wanted to call those two herbs out for their duality, when it comes to menstruation and bleeding.
So mineral rich, we are flushing out, and therefore we should be replacing. Also touched on the tide and the waters. And so if you think of mineral rich and you think of the waters and how it connects with us and our little mini ocean that we have going on inside, seaweed is a perfect addition to your diet, your smoothie, whatever, during this time, before and after, of course. The iodine and all the minerals that are in it. Another thing that I wanted to mention, I forgot, was with all of the things going on, the signs and wonders that we get with our skin and with our bodies, is our immunity. Like 80%, I think, is where I read, of our immunity goes into preparing for a child and then doing the whole flushing out. And so many people will catch colds, their allergies get all acting up, they feel sick, or they get nauseous, or all of these different things, because your immunity is really, really low. It's focusing on your fertility at that point. So keeping up on vitamin C and eating really well and sitting out in the sun, grounding, all of those kind of things are also, in a way, herbal. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Chava. Thank you, Rivka.
Nourishing herbal infusions as well. We've talked about nourishing herbal infusions before. I won't go into them so strong. And one of those definitely is nettle, which Gila mentioned before. Vitex and Dong Quai. I'm not going to go into the details of those herbs right now, but I can just say that when I'm looking at different cycle issues with my clients, those are the two main herbs I'm looking for when I'm dealing with major issues. That's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to place who's a Vitex person and who's a Dong Quai person. Of course, I'm looking at plenty of other herbs too, like Gila mentioned, red clover and, red raspberry leaf. But yeah, there's so much to say about it, because we also want to talk about women who want to change their cycles, before they're getting married or go under the chuppah, and they say, oh, I don't want to be, nida under the chuppah, and I want to push off my period or change my period, or I'm going on vacation, I want to push off my period. And there are herbs that can overhaul your cycle, but it's an overhaul. It's not just, like Western medicine says, take some estrogen pills or whatever. And, it's not a good idea because our cycles are a reflection of what our bodies desperately need from the inside out for health. And when we start changing when we start changing those cycles, we're messing not only with our, when we get our period, but we're messing with our hormones at the deepest level. We're messing with our needs at the deepest level. We're trying to, it's another form of stuff something up there. It's just stuff in those hormones and they have to wait. And it's just, and then all this other things, it starts popping out in different ways, whether it's breakouts in the skin or major digestion issues or immunity issues, even one time, even just to change your cycle once with a few of these pills or whatever it is. You have to really, really think through it. And a lot of times I talk with women about this idea of a 28-day cycle that we're kind of sold on, that we should have a period every 28 days and we ovulate on day 14. And that isn't how it is. That's not real. That's just kind of what the Western medical model has established so that they can teach doctors and other people in their profession what a cycle should look like. But it's not there, it doesn't exist. There's a range. And what I've found in my practice is that 25 to even around 35, 40 days can be normal. It can be perfectly normal. And I know people, disagree with me, but I do see very healthy women on those two ends of the spectrum and everywhere in between. And we really need to honor what Hashem has given to us, our body's way of moving and flowing and emptying out and releasing and then taking in and storing. And that's going to be different for every woman. It's not one size fits all.
I have a
Any other
question.
thoughts or comments
I
before
wanted,
before questions?
oh, you have a question? Sure.
Yes.
No. Before I'd like to do questions in a Q&A when we're not
Oh, okay.
recording.
So yeah,
Okay.
I would like to mention something, and I'm like was nodding my head the whole time. Like it is such a big deal that has been so played down today, and the pressure that is placed on young women to not have a chupanida is so there is so much pressure, and they're always told, yeah, it's not a big deal. And it's really sad because when a woman, when it's her body and her cycle is so disrespected, it's almost violating on a spiritual, emotional level. Or when a woman is like, I'm going on vacation, I get this, I need to push my cycle off, or I have never counseled anyone, and I don't have very much knowledge even herbally, because I don't think there are herbs. I think you need to take hormones to fully do that. And, you know, I don't even go there because I worry about, I have concerns about women who are denied their body sovereignty and the respect of the cycle. If it's something that you can just, okay, you can't have a chupanida. You take this now, it's fine, you'll be fine. You're not asking the woman. You're not respecting her spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And this cycle has been reduced to something that you just put off. It never was this way. And most of us can probably look back and know about a grandparent, at least one, on one side of the family who had a chupanida. And it wasn't a big deal, you know? in the big in the big sense of things. But today there's a lot of pressure. And again, this is taking so much away from these beautiful women who are just being conditioned and will perpetuate that cycle further.
This idea of flushing that we have once a month for the middle part of our lives. It's told it's sticky, it's yucky, it's dirty, it's sinful, it's whatever, all these horrible words. But our bodies were so designed that not only is it flushing out a pregnancy that never became, it is actually a form of detox for women that men don't have. And if you stop that detox that naturally is designed inside of you on a very specific timeline, whatever yours happens to be, you are stopping this detox and therefore holding it in and therefore causing, God forbid, who knows what kind of future diseases, tumors, cysts. It can go on and on because it might not manifest for a while after. But we have actually brought it on ourselves through these pills and injections and whatever else, stopping our own detox, which is so huge because it's not a detox that lasts a few hours. It can go on a week, it can go on 5 days, it can go on 3 days. And it's very specific to each body. So something to think about.
I think I'd like to end on the note that the halacha supports a woman's menstrual cycle being in a woman's domain. So, for example, when a woman states that she's nida or she's begun her period, we halachically rely on her word. We rely on that. A woman never, ever has to prove to her husband that she's started her period. She never has to prove to her husband, she never has to share a bidika cloth with him to show him that she got a hapsek, that's good or whatever. We rely on the woman to determine when her bleeding has begun, when her bleeding has stopped, halachically. Okay. And it's one of the few things where we really do, it's like totally like that, where one woman's word, no other witnesses are needed, nobody else. It's completely her domain. Gila told me that this is not in practice everywhere, but I did learn when I became a Kala teacher that the halacha also supports women. It supports women so far in this area that if a woman decides that okay, so it's traditional. Let's start here. When a woman marries a man, she takes on his family minhagim. Okay, so if an Ashkenazi woman marries a Sephardi man, which I did, which Chava did, okay, I took on my husband's minhagim. So I started praying Birkat Hamazon the Sephardi way. I started taking on Sephardi customs. However, when it comes to Taharat HaMishpacha, I am permitted, okay, there should be rabbinical involvement here because it's complicated and everyone's kind of holding differently. But halachically, I would have a right to request that I keep my own minhag for Taharat HaMishpacha, and the halacha should support me on that. It should. And that's what I learned, that it does. Okay. I'm saying should because I understand it isn't always playing out that way, unfortunately. But if I wanted to keep my Ashkenazi minhag with regards to Taharat HaMishpacha, I would have a right to do that. I would have halachic support for doing that. And the reason why is because even though a woman's cycle determines when a husband and wife can have physical touch or have intercourse or share food out of the same plate or on and on and on, the halacha really understands that, even though you would think, well, a husband's involved here too. But the halacha is so supportive of women that it says, really, this is no one else's business but yours. And you have no one else to answer to, including your husband. What you say about your menstrual cycle goes for everybody. And I think that's really incredible and really, really beautiful. And we can be proud of that as Jewesses, as Jewish women. Maybe the very last thing is just like we talked about, some hot water bottles. Gila talked about a foot bath, some yoga or stretching, different ways of care. Just making sure to take some time to nourish your body and love your body during that time. So if we're done, I think we'll close out and then we'll go to a Q&A. Okay, thank you. We're good to go, Lowell.
I have so many